So we're going to make a simple animation, and we're going to import this into After Effects. And I can't remember all these steps exactly because I have to memorize tons of things, and I also have to pay bills, which is hard. So let's go to New and 2D Animation. And if I go to New 2D Animation, the screen looks all white. But if I roll my mouse out, you'll see that we see the camera's passport right here. And if I roll around, we'll see that, yeah, it's just a camera pointed at a white world. Let's look through the camera again. And then we'll just draw. Right now, I'm drawing with the pencil tool. I like the, I'm not going to import the other brushes for now. I like this wobbly ink pen tool. It looks like this. And I'm drawing with a mouse, which is fun. Not. So let me look at my layers. Right now I'm drawing on the lines layer. What I think I'll do is I'll create another grease pencil layer, and I'll call this the face outline. And it'll be, as I say here, it'll just be a face outline, really good face drawn with a mask. And so if I hit play now, it just stays there. It doesn't do anything, and that's fine. And let's create another layer. Let's call that eyes. And so I've got the eyes layer selected. I'll just draw an eye, and I'll draw another eye. And let's create another layer. Let's call that mouth. Let's put the nose on it to confuse you. No, I won't do that. We'll just draw a mouth, okay? And let's create another layer. Let's call it pupils. Hey, you guys are pupils. And then let's make my brush really big. And let's just draw some big pupils. Pointed and wall-eye, because that's funny. It's not funny, it's sad, but it's also funny. So now if I hit play, it doesn't look like an animation at all. So I don't want to draw every frame here. That's hard, and life is short. So let's come over to our modifier tool. Let's add a noise modifier. And this is going to add it to this whole object up here called stroke. So noise. Now if I hit play, we see it all changing. It's added noise to the animation. But you can change the positions, the strength, and so forth of that. So if I just hit play and make adjustments here, we'll see what that's doing to the noise animation. Turn up the strength. That changes the value. Should say value. Change the thickness of the lines. The noise scale, the noise offset, and the noise seed, so it's just a slightly different noise. This one right here is important, randomize. This determines how often the noise is applied. If you right now it says steps, that means the noise is applied every 4 frames. If we change it to every frame, by changing that to 1, then the noise becomes much more jittery. But if we change it to something slower, then it looks more like this. I think frame step 2 would be running at like 12 frames per second because I'm running at 24 frames per second because that's the Blender default, 24 frames per second. So by having that, my animation looks like it's happening every other frame. We could also change our Blender animation so that it runs at 12 frames per second. And then we could change the steps to every 1 frame. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So when a tool is versatile and lets you do lots of stuff, the learning curve is steeper, but it's worth it because you can do lots of stuff and it becomes a lot more powerful, and ultimately you'll be doing less work than when you use the easier tools. Procreate. Okay? So it's worthwhile to spend the time to do this. Now, I want to animate some parts of this, like let's try animating the eyes. So I'll select the eyes layer, and you can easily turn off the different layers. Notice that there's a little eyeball here. So if we wanted to turn off the other layers temporarily so they don't distract us, we can do that. And so that way I just want to draw the eyes and have them open and close. Now I want the eyes to open up and return to their original state. So I'm just going to do something that might be a little counterintuitive, and I'm going to duplicate that first keyframe. Shift D, and I'm going to move it over here. And I want them to open and close, just blink like the eyes are a little bit alive. So about right here, depending on how much time I want the eyes to take. If I blink in real life, it takes about 1/3 of a second, maybe less, maybe 1/10 of a second. So if I zoom in close to the timeline here and know that I'm running at 24 frames per second, then I know that on frame 1, I'm just going to run here. So if I want it to take like maybe 6 frames, then I'll set another keyframe right here, just duplicating the same eye positions. And then right here in the middle, I'll just draw 2 slits for the eyes being closed. So, and because I have auto keyframing turned on, which is on by default in 2D animation, it'll automatically create a new keyframe. If you want it to be exactly in the middle, I have to give it a little bit more time there. So then if I draw that, you see the other eyes now become onion skins. So if I hit play, we've made a blink. And if we want to add more frames between those, like in between frames, then we can just say, all right, let's make a little bit like this, and a little bit like this. And then we can just copy these guys again, these keyframes, because they're exactly the same, Shift D to right there. So we've made a little bit of a blink. Does that make sense? Now, remember, I made a pupil keyframe. And so if the pupils are there, the pupils need to go away, right? You guys are smiling at me like I'm doing something weird. Am I doing something weird? No? Okay, I'm not invoking some sort of bad thought or something? Okay, because that happens these days. I'm like, I don't catch on. All right, good, all right. So I'm gonna select the pupil layer, and we see that the pupil layer only has a keyframe here at the beginning. So we need to do the same thing. We need to make the pupils go away and then come back. So we know the pupils are here at the beginning, so we're gonna have the pupils here when the blink starts, and we're gonna also, I'm just hitting Shift D to duplicate, and then I have the pupils come back at the beginning. So here on this keyframe, we just need the pupils to go away. So I'll take the erase tool and then just erase. You'll see the, notice that I'm also erasing the slits on the eyes, which isn't helpful, so I need to like either lock or turn off that layer so I don't accidentally erase them, which I'm surprised it's doing that, but anyway. Let's get rid of that. So all we're seeing now is the onion skinning remain. And if you don't want onion skins turned on, you can turn those off under display. No, where is that? It might be under the modifier. Nope. I thought it was in the data properties here, but yeah, onion skinning. Display, fade, yeah, anyway. So we see them go away, almost go away. Let's leave it a little bit more. Okay. So now the eyes go away. If we turn the eye, or the pupils go away. So if we turn the eyes back on, creates the illusion that it's blinking. Cool, huh? So then if we want that to repeat, we can just select all of those keyframes and hit Shift D and move it over there. So then the eyes will blink twice. We can turn on the other layers. And you know what? I think the keyframes here in the middle aren't so useful. So we'll just have the eyes blink like this instead. Get rid of these middle keyframes and have the eyes come over here instead. The cool thing about doing this kind of animation is you don't have to worry about tweening or anything like that, because it's all just frame by frame. So interpolation, so you can do all of that in here if you want, but you don't have to. You just do frame by frame animation, and some students really prefer this type of animation. I think that looks cleaner. I prefer that. It's kind of funny how that works out. And then let's just have him smile towards the end here. So right now, the default animation length in Blender is about 10 seconds or 250 frames. So he comes up, blinks, and then let's just have his where's the mouth? There it is, the mouth. Let's have that turn into a smile. So we want it to start to change here. So we're just going to duplicate the start keyframe and then have the ending keyframe here. And then we'll have it return back to the straight line after a couple moments. So I'll duplicate it again, Shift D, and move it over here. So it'll be about 1 second where he has a little smile. So we'll draw a new smile right here, just slightly different, making sure I have the mouth layer selected. And then maybe make it a little bit bigger for the next frame. So it's like that. Then we'll see that animation happen. If we want it to happen faster, just get the keyframes closer together. It might look better. I don't like this bigger smile, so we'll just get rid of that one. Just have it change quickly to a little smile. And then we'll just have it sit there for a little while. And then let's go ahead and have him blink again. I don't like the order of these guys, so I'm going to change the order of it to make it a little bit easier to manage. Then I'll take these guys, and let's have him blink, Shift D, after he smiles. And let's have him blink a little bit faster this time to make it a little bit more varied. So I'm just going to hit G to move these over. Then his blink goes away. And if we want to, sometimes people, when they change their expressions, they also blink. So let's just duplicate these blinks for when his smile goes away, to hide it a little bit. And that's the end of my animation. So we'll go to frame 180. Let's end the movie actually about right here. So now, you see the blinks, and it goes back, and then it makes a perfect loop. Does that make sense? Now, keep in mind, this is Blender, so everything is in 2D. So we see our smile and everything out here in 2D. So notice that the pupils have like a thickness to them. So it's kind of crazy when you think about it. And the other kind of crazy thing is we can add other stuff to this. So if I look through the camera again, we see the whole face up there. We can move the camera around. So if I have the camera selected and I split my view, let's just come out. Let's use my move tools. Let's get out of draw mode, go to object mode, select the camera. I can move the camera around in this view so I have more room. And I can still come back over here into draw mode. Got to select the stroke object first. Go into draw mode. Take the pencil tool. Let's create another layer. We'll call it body. And we'll just draw on the body layer here on the first frame. We've got the same pen tool here. Just go, just give him a nice sort of little body here. And now, because I've got a noise modifier added to the whole thing, then the whole layer will look like it's moving. It's easy peasy, lemon squeezy, as we say. Now, you could probably have an AI in a couple weeks do all that for you by describing it, but you'll never teach it the subtlety. And that's maybe you will, I don't know. But I like having this much control over what I make. And likewise, I can draw a fill layer instead of a solid layer to create solidity behind the head and everything. But if we wanted to get this out, let's go ahead and save it, save as. Let's save it in, we're in March now, aren't we? Let's go to March 24 projects. Did I create a folder here for that yet? Yeah. Let's call it Stick Boy. And then let's export a video. And remember, I want to export it with an alpha channel so I can do stuff with it in After Effects. And it'll just be lines, but that's okay. So I'm going to come over to my film properties under the render settings and turn on transparent. And then if I switch this to the rendered mode here, we'll see that that's transparent. It's only in the look dev view where we see the white background. So with the rendered view, we actually see the alpha channel. Then I'll go to my output settings. And let's go ahead and make that it'll just be a PNG sequence. Let's go to March 24. Let's create a new folder. And let's call it Stick Boy. Accept. So right now my movie starts here, my movie ends here. It's going to render PNGs with an alpha channel. RGBA means red, green, blue, alpha. And so that means it'll have that alpha channel when we export it. PNGs make crude alpha channels, but they'll work for this purpose. I see people sleeping. I'm sorry, this is boring. And then let's go ahead and render that. So once we've got all that set up, we can go to render, render animation, but always hit save before you render an animation, especially when you're doing a screen recording at the same time, and then it should render. It should render really fast because it's just a grease pencil animation. Should render faster than that, but So setting up these kind of keyframes and repeating the keyframes would be really difficult in Photoshop, because Photoshop doesn't use that. You just draw on the frames directly. And to a certain degree, the same is true with After Effects. But in Blender, all of these lines that you're drawing are not raster images. They are, in fact, vector forms. So what that means ultimately is, let me hit escape here. That means on every frame, you can go into it and leave draw mode and go into sculpt mode. And then you have all these different sculpt tools. And so that way, if you need to art direct it, you can take all this and you can just say, all right, let's just move this line a little bit here. Let's move this line a little bit here, which you cannot do in any other program. Notice that it's creating keyframes for me while I do this. If I turn off auto keyframing, that won't happen. Or I could change it on the keyframes directly. So this ability to sculpt and to do all this other type of manipulation to your lines is incredibly powerful and freeing when you're drawing. And notice that when I'm in sculpt mode, you can see the original lines that I drew for these edges right here. So that means you can also do things like you can grab it, but there should be also, you can more randomize lines like that. But I think you can also change the strength and the thickness. Yeah, that's a terrible icon for it. But I can grab a line here and I should be able to, oh, I'm not on a keyframe, that's a problem. I can make lines thicker in certain areas if I need to. So I can create the illusion of hair and so forth. And then it goes away because I accidentally created these keyframes here, delete. But then it'll go away with the other keyframe. Well, I never created a new keyframe for the head, so if I needed to change that, yeah, I could just make his hair thicker here if I needed to. That's fun. Okay, we'll come back to that. I've exported it out. Let's go to Armature, new project, new composition. We're at 1920 by 1080, running at 24 frames per second. I got a duration of 1 minute. Let's change my background color to white for now. Awk. Let's import the sequence that I just made. Import file. We'll go to March 24 projects, Stick Boy, and you can see everything there. It's rendering out with an alpha channel. We'll just select the first frame and select PNG sequence. Import. Now, here's the important thing. If I drop this onto the timeline right now, we'll see our Stick Boy. It only plays for this amount of time, but also it might be running at a faster frame rate than we want it to run at. So we're going to delete it. We're going to right click on the sequence and say interpret footage, and then main. I know. All right. And then so here we have some settings for it. It says assume this frame rate. All right, so it is playing at the correct frame rate. By default, on most of your After Effects installations, the default frame rate for imported sequences is 30 frames per second. You can change that in the preferences, which it appears I have done. And square fields, override, assume this frame rate, and then straight unmatted alpha, it's just it's assuming the correct alpha channel, but you can choose pre-multiplied with black, and it might have nicer edges. So I'm going to click Awk, and notice down here where it says loop, it says loop 1 time. If I want it to be a looping animation, I can change this to like 1,000 or 11,000, or however many times I need it to loop for my animation. And that's the kicker. Do I want it to loop? So I click Awk, and then I drop this in. I'm going to change my rendering mode to full to make sure that my alpha channel is nice and smooth. Now, after we've imported it, it is a raster image, so that's why we'll see pixelation if we get really close to it. So now we see our dude. It's playing in real time because it's just a simple frame sequence. Let's go ahead and just move this down. Notice that it's looping now because we changed the looping time to 1,000 frames. So you can do this with all your Procreate animations. Just make sure you choose to loop. You can bring in your videos as MP4s, but MP4s can't have alpha channels. So if you want a video file with an alpha channel, you have to render it in a different format. And so I don't recommend doing that. I recommend a frame sequence just because it's my vast experience in After Effects that if you're working with frame sequences as your source materials as opposed to video files, After Effects is 1,000 times more stable and faster. But if you do make an MP4 or if you want an alpha channel in a video file, you have to export it as a MOV, Apple ProRes with an alpha channel, and those take up much larger file sizes. Anyway, I can hit Control D on this layer, and I can move this guy over using the Move tool. I'll just move this other guy over. Because I didn't create any solidity in him, he's see-through, but I can just move this down here. And now he'll be in perfect sync with himself, which won't look very good. So I'll just offset this layer a little bit by just clicking and dragging. So that way he is now in a slightly different timeline than the other one. And likewise, I'll take this one and scale that one down. Just have them at different sizes slightly. Grab this one, move this one over here. And select this one again, Control D, duplicate. Let's have it a slightly different size. Let's offset it again. Because we're looping 1,000 times, we've got lots to work with. Control D, move this over here, have him just be a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit taller. Move him over here. And move this one over here. Good. Let's take all of them. Got all of them selected. I'm going to hit Control D again, and then with all of them selected, just move them all over here, off the frame. Then let's hit Control D again. Stop it. I'm going to hit Control D again, and then move them all again, all the way over here. Now, I've got a whole line of dudes sitting there blinking. And so what I want to do now is go to Layer, New. Let's save it before it crashes. Save as. Go to March 24 projects. And we'll call this Stick Boy. Now with the composition selected, I'm going to go to Layer, New, Camera. And we'll just create a default camera in here. So there we go. And everything should still look more or less the same. Kind of disappeared on me. If it starts to get laggy, change your resolution here. We'll go to a 1/3. So we still see all of our dudes blinking individually, smiling individually. Now let's take our camera and let's set some keyframes for it. Let's go to Transform. Let's change its position. So we've set the starting position is right here. Let's move it on the x-axis. Come on, you can do it. Position. And the point of interest, it might need to change too. Oh, you know what? Those layers are not set up as 3D layers. So we're just going to tell the, you know what? It might be faster and easier to set this up as an individual composite instead of moving the camera. But we're going to go ahead and turn all of these guys into a 3D object. So we're just going to go blum, 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 blum. By selecting all of them and making them a 3D object, then we should be able to move the camera around. Let's switch our view here to 2 views. So we see the camera right here, and if we move the camera, we see our guys move. That's my goal. So we're just going to have the camera rotate around through all of that. Let's change the angle of it. I guess that's good enough. So we'll set a keyframe right here for the position. Then we'll go down 1 minute later, and then just have the camera be on the other side. Looks like there's more guys over there. Didn't mean to create them, but that's okay. So now, if I play it, notice that the point of area is all the way over there now, which is not what I wanted. So we'll have to animate that as well. So let's select that point of interest and move that. So move that to right there. So a keyframe there for point of interest. Then towards the end of the animation, we put that point of interest. I don't like this concept. Back right here. So that a keyframe is created there as well. So that way, all of our guys move around. Let's move that point of interest here slightly off camera. Let's switch to one view. And one view is the cameras, active cameras view. Then we can play it. And so it's a 1 minute long animation, so it's really slow. But we could create a parallax where we have multiple guys in the back and they would be moving in parallax with this as it moves. But the real goal of this is to show you how you can create one simple animation and duplicate that resource over and over again and have it loop, and then you understand how we can start bringing those elements in for like the Catch Me If You Can and have those loop and do different things. If we look inside of the individual objects right here, transform, I don't know if there is an option without using an expression to have it stop looping or playing on its own. And I think there might be an expression that says, all right, loop this many times, or loop forever, but stop at this keyframe. And I think there might be a way to do that, but I can't remember what that way is. Does that make sense? What are your questions, thoughts, perturbations? I know half of you, or most of you, won't use the Blender grease pencil tool, but it is really powerful and it's super fun to use. And we have the jittery animation. It's kind of hard to see when we're running only at a third, but when we run at the full, we'll start seeing what we got here. And there's also lots of modifiers and individual things. If we wanted to break the arms and stuff into its own parts, there's other effects that we can add. So you have modifiers that you can add, and that's to the whole grease pencil object. But then there's these little magic tools that you can add to individual strokes. Things like blur, pixelate, glow. So if I've got the body selected and I want to add one of these, let's try flip. And flip it horizontally. I don't see it doing it. So, oh, you got to look in rendered mode to see it. So it's making a liar out of me there. So let's take it and add. Let's turn off the transparency temporarily so we can see what we're doing. Go to this magic effect. Let's try pixelate. What do we get? Add an effect. Anti-aliasing. I might be forgetting something here, which I jumped too far and I'm being cursed for it. So I got it on the body. These lines. All right, I'll come back to that because there's some interesting effects that you can get there that I like to use occasionally. For example, let's go ahead and save this. Let's come over here and go to 2D animation again. If you want to create animations like a lot that you see on, say, Adult Swim or something, if I switch this over to, yeah, we're in draw mode, but I want to let's use this ink pen, and let's change my material so that this fill also, or this stroke also has a fill. So let's just choose a fill, and let's give it a fill of this 50% gray, maybe a yellowish color here. So when I do that, I'll be drawing with a fill, which can be really quite useful. And then if I come over to my render panel here and go to stroke effects, I can add a shadow. Is it a shadow or the glow that I want? I believe it's a shadow. Nope, let's do it this way. I want to add a rim. I think it was a rim. Yep, that's what I want. And so then I offset that rim by a certain amount. So I create one rim on one side, and you can actually blur it if you were so inclined. Create more samples to make it soft. And then you can change that color of it. If it's too bright, you can make it a bit more subtle. And then you can add another rim and just offset it. So this one we'll put on the other side and do the same thing, give it a little bit of a blur. And let's make it darker. And you can change the overlay. If you don't like this overlay, you can just make it like that instead. And same with this one. Just change it to a regular overlay. And so then we've created just like an orb with like shading, pseudo shading. If you want harsh shading or smooth shading, you can do that too. And in fact, there's no real point if you're trying to make a cartoon, then you're undermining your cartooniness by making the blur. I just have that habit. So if we draw that there and then draw this here, the interesting thing about this is as soon as I add a noise modifier to it, and then I change that noise scale, all of that will be followed. And so then if I hit play, see there it's changing alongside it. So then from there, I can come over to my layers. Let's add another layer. We'll call this one ojos. And then we'll come over to my materials and create a new material. We'll call that one ojos. And we'll fill it with white. So using the same pencil tool with a black surface, a solid line, notice, those of you that want to try this, you can change the line type from line to dots to squares. And same with the fill, you can change the fill to a texture. So that's the secret when you want to create the texture for like the other stuff. You can import just like a noise texture or like that texture that looks like charcoal and use that as the texture for your material instead of these solid colors. So for all the things that you've been trying to do, there is a way to figure that out. So anyway, we've made a new material called ojos, and we've got a new layer called ojos. So then I'll just draw that layer, complete with the fill. And let's go ahead and create another layer called mouth, and then create a new material called mouth, and likewise fill that. Let's fill it with a gradient. And so it'll gradiate from red to a dark red. All right, and then it's got that same fill. We're on the mouth material and we're on the mouth layer. Just go, and if the gradient isn't actually showing up, we can adjust it till it does. Let's come over to the material. It's on linear. Change the amount of blending. You can change the rotation of that blending. So this software is free, by the way. Change the scale of it. So that way you've got all of that in there. Let's go ahead and create another thing. It's really advanced, but he just draws stick figures. Okay. Pupils again. So another layer has been created called pupils. Then let's come over to our materials, create a new material, and we'll just call this pupils. Notice that for each element I have to create, and if I change these elements after it's animated, they'll change as well. So anyway, pupils, and that will just be a fill without a stroke. And so then we'll just draw the pupils into the pupils layer. So be a fill there, then a fill here. Okay. Then we can come back into object mode, and we'll see all of our objects. If we hit play, we see the noise changing there, and we've drawn a shape that animates itself rather quickly. Complete with a fill, complete with a shade. And what about the eyes? Can we do the same thing with the eyes? Yes, you can do the same thing with the eyes. So since the eyes are on their own layer, can come over to the ojos layer, come over to the magic. I guess that's only applied to the whole object then. So maybe not. So no. If I wanted the eyes to have their own rim shading, they'd have to be on their own grease pencil object. I thought it was the other way around. I guess not. I have been corrected. And also, if you want to remove elements from the onion skinning, this button will do it. And what was that one again? Use a mask. You can use a mask, and I've not gotten into masks, but they're evidently very powerful. All right. Is that more than you needed? I'd like to try the texture thing, and so I'll come back to that, because I'm pretty sure if I play around with that enough, we can get to exactly what you're trying to do. Because you can build all these elements, and instead of animating them frame by frame, you can animate them with armatures in Blender, in 2D objects. And then you can do your walking cycle in 2D really quickly, and then make all of that very programmable and very repeatable, and it works quite well. Yes, Maggie?
So if it is could you go back to the Blender, like default and edit it walking?
Yes. So if I come back over here and just make a simple stick figure, let's do a 2D animation. Maggie didn't, you guys don't get a break yet. Maggie wants a stick figure armature. Here we go. She asked for it. This is what you're getting, all right? So Stick figure armature, real quick. Just doing it all on one layer, short legs, really long arms, okay? Super happy smile, eyes in the center, okay? So let's build an armature for that. Let's go to object mode. And so we're right here, let's go Shift A, we're gonna create an armature. If you're new to Blender, armatures are bone systems for animating things. Let's move this armature over to the root of this dude's spine. Let's go into edit mode on that armature, edit mode. Let's move it into place, G. I'm going to hit E for extend, E for extend, E for extend. And then here, we want arms to grow out. So we're going to do the same stuff that we did in the Blender class. If you had my Blender class, we're going to turn on X mirror right here. And then I'm going to hit Shift E, so it comes out on both sides. And then I'm just going to just grow out individually the bones. Now, because I didn't make the arms symmetrical, I'm going to turn off X from here on out, because it's going to get weird if I don't. And I'm just going to hit G, E for extend, E for extend, and then E for extend, E, E, E. And then here, I need 2 more legs, so Shift E, and then turn off X mirror and just adjust it accordingly, G. I cannot remember this process exactly, so I'm sorry if this doesn't work. I'm going to go back into object mode. I'm going to select my ink, my grease pencil ink. I'm going to shift select the armature, and then I'm going to hit Control P, and I'm going to armature deform with automatic weights. All right, and then I'm going to select the armature again. I'm going to go back into pose mode, and then under pose options, we're just going to turn on auto IK for a quick and quick animation. I'm going to split my screen so that way one view sees the screen without any overlays. So we just see our stick figure guy, and then over here we just have this guy, and then oh my god! So obviously the automatic weights wasn't perfect, but my plan would work exactly as I want. So how do I adjust this accordingly so that it doesn't, so it grabs the whole face? We have to adjust the vertex groups. So that we do under weight painting. Weight painting, yes. So I select my grease pencil, and then we'll select weight paint. And then as we select the individual vertex groups, which I don't know how that works here, because I don't know how to select the individual strokes. Grease pencil, lines, fills, relationships. I don't know. Because basically I need to be able to select this upper bone. So I guess I have to select the bone system manually. So maybe we need to switch back to object mode, select this bone, go into edit mode, select this bone, and then select my weight paint here. No, that's a tough one. I don't know how I'm going to do that, because I need to select the right vertex groups, but grease pencils, as far as I know, don't have vertexes. Oh, never mind. I completely lied. Here they are. They do have vertexes. So I just need to select the right one, which would probably be one of the bones towards the top. That one. So this bone 3 just needs to be painted darker around the edges. So I just right there. So that way the whole head is selected by that. Then we go back into object mode, select the bones, go into pose mode, and G. Yeah. So then we just set keyframes. Since auto keyframing is already turned on, I'm just going to select all the bones, I, location rotation, and so that way my bones will be started to animate. I'm going to switch this to the dope sheet. These are all my individual bones here, and let's just come down a few frames. G. Move this over here. Let's move this bone over here. G. Yeah. And then let's move this bone, R. So his head goes right there. Let's pick up this leg, G. Oh no. Let's try rotating. R. Okay, so we made those keyframes. Let's just duplicate these keyframes, move these over here, and then in my timeline right here, and then switch back to object mode, and only that leg moves. I guess I got to move those keyframes manually, but armatures work. So it's kind of sick, yeah. All right, I promise I'm done. Don't want to ask any more questions or I won't be done.